Hey folks, Rob here bringing another Initial Recce. This one's going to be A114 Hamlets Demise. Now this is an ASL annual scenario. It's from the 97 magazine. If you have not got the electronic journal bundle, then I highly recommend you do, because again you get access to all those annuals from way back, as well as all the scenarios, and I believe most of them have the errata updated, because this one definitely does. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, this scenario takes place at the very beginning of the German assault into France and Belgium, and this one occurred on 13 May 1940. The game uses most of GeoBoard 24, which is the Valley board. So all of the dark green you can see there is a -1 level, and including this area here around the two row houses. This is an overlay that's added. We'll get to that. However, it does not have the level -1 color. Just remember that this is always going to be a -1. The Germans enter from the west on turn 1, while the French can set up anywhere on board, and the game lasts 6 turns. Now in ASL Scenario Archive, there's 104 plays, and you can see from the graph here that it's very much skewed for the Germans. Scenario Archive only has 10 plays, and there's another 94 on Roar. But again, even on Roar, the data seems to support German victories over the French. Now, if you look at the results, most of them, as we said, are German wins. However, there's a French win recorded. Unfortunately, there's just no information on how that accomplished. Was it dice rolling? Was it some combination thereof? Maybe poor tactics on one side. It all depends what those factors were to determine why the French ended up winning. So looking at the victory conditions, they're quite simple. The Germans win at the end of any player turn if they have amassed 16 or more CVP, provided the French have not amassed 20 CVP. I draw your attention to the player turn. So that means any time at the end of a player turn, German 1 or the French turn 1, provided these conditions are met, then the Germans will win. So if at any point in the battle the French on their turn have amassed 20, or it could be in the German turn, again, it will deny the Germans a victory, and therefore it would be a French win. Now, given the CVP totals of the orders of battle, the French will have 24, and the Germans will have 37 CVP. Now, that does not count for prisoners. Remember that when you collect prisoners, they're worth double at game end. So you do not get them until the game is over. At that point, any prisoners are counted double. So with 24 French units, that's basically 14 worth of French MMC infantry, and therefore you will have to at least take out the gun and the crew, and possibly the tank as well if you're the German player. When it comes to scenario special rules, there's only 5. The first one is the EC conditions, which are moderate, and there's a mild breeze from the southwest at start. So in the original scenario, it was from the west, but it should be from the southwest. That's in the errata, which again is updated in the annual, like, digital version that I have. SSR2 is this overlay, which again is X18. It's placed in this orientation, so you have 2 multi-hex row houses, as well as a wooden building added in place of the factory and lumber yards that were there. Another point is this building here, U4. This is considered a 2-story building, so there's no level 2, so these should be small little dots, not the big square. So up here, you only have a ground floor in the first level, and in the valley, you have a ground floor in the first level. Aside from that, the buildings still match. The connections between the buildings still exist at the first level in U4 and the ground level at V3. So just remember that this is only a 1.5 level obstacle, not a level 2.5. There's also no bore sighting allowed for the defender, despite having a medium. I'm not sure why they threw that one in. I think the French really need help, and maybe having a bore-sighted hex might actually make it a little bit easier for the French to try and eke out a victory. But regardless, right now the SSR number 4 is no bore sighting. And then lastly, the German 838 is an assault engineer, so note the increased smoke exponent of 5. All right, let's look at the German unit composition. Now, as you saw in the scenario brief, the German units have an ELR of 3. Remember, assault engineers always have an, or A38s always have an elite ELR of 5. And their sniper activation number is only a 3. Now, the Germans have a total of 37 CVP worth of men and material. Again, that counts the tanks. And the French just have to kill off 20 of them. So if they can do a good number on the infantry, then maybe the tanks will survive. But definitely if they can focus fire on your tanks and take them out, that's going to be a lot of victory points for them. The German order of battle consists of 9 squads, including 1 838, 2 467s, and then you have 6 447 second line troops, along with the 3 leaders, which is pretty decent. You do have 9-1 and 2 8-0s. Remember, again, the 838 smoke exponent is a 5, and it's going to definitely help cover your assault, at least for that unit. Or also, your first line infantry do have a 1, which is not impossible, but it is rather rare that you're probably going to get off smoke grenades from your first lines. Support weapons are 2 LMGs and the ATR. Now, the ATR is not going to do much against the tank. The AP is just too low, and unless you get a real close shot, maybe a rear shot, although the French tank does have the same armor factors on both all around. You might have to try for an immobilization shot with the ATR if you so choose. The flamethrower, as we know. And then there's 3 different AFE for the battle. We have a Panzer IIIF, which is entitled to the multiple hit rule because its caliber size is less than 40 and greater than 20, which means that anytime you roll doubles to hit, you can get 2 to kill rolls and you can pick which one you want to apply. The AP, which is all these 3 tanks have, they have no APCR until 41, so all you're going to have is straight up AP, and the AP to kill number is only going to be a 9. Again, the French tank's a 4, and it is upper superstructure, so it's going to bring it up to a 6, which means you have to roll really well to get any kind of pen with the 37 long, and it's by far your biggest, quote-unquote tank killer. It also has a 2 rate of fire. Now, the Panzer IIF here also has a 2 rate of fire. However, it does have IFE capability, so you can combine it with your coax for a total of 8 firepower to get a nice MG attack. However, unlike the Panzer III, you're going to be having an 11 breakdown number, and that also goes for the Panzer 1B as well. So all 3 German AFEs do have an 11 for breakdown value, so that's very important to remember. Now, when it comes to the Panzer 1B, again, you have a 2 to kill die rolls because of the coax ability, should you want to take out a tank, but it's a 4 pen, barring any close range, and it's going to be almost impossible for you to get any kind of effect versus the French tank. And, of course, you do have that rate of fire 1. Now, all 3 tanks, you can see, also have smoke discharges, which is probably going to be their biggest use, besides helping you cut off the French forces. So if you're worried about covering or moving through this open ground, don't forget that all 3 tanks do have a fairly decent smoke discharge capability of 7 and a 6 for the Panzer 1B. Alright, let's look at the French order of battle. Now, the French units have an ELR of 2, which is going to suck, and they do have a sniper of 4, which is not too bad, but the ELR is really going to cripple your forces because you're going to have a lot of 437 green squads. Just these 3 squads are not part of the order of battle. I'm just using for demonstration. You're going to have a lot of ELR replacements for your first line. They're going to become 437 green squads. And on both sides, remember your morale is going to be lowered by 1. As well, should you heat a battle to a 458, your broken morale is still going to be only a 7. So the having a low ELR is not really great for the long-term survivability of the French. Now, the French have a total of 24 CVP in men and material. Obviously, prisoners would count double for the infantry, depending what happens with the tank, disabling and gun malfunctions, that kind of stuff. It might be less, but they generally speaking have a max of 24 CVP. So the Germans, in order to meet their victory conditions, must capture some of these guys. Right, they have to destroy the gun because it is worth 4. CVP, while your tank is going to be worth another 6. So this right here almost meets a German victory condition. So make sure that you try and save your tank and save your AT gun. Now, when it comes to support weapons, you've only got 2, and that is the medium and the light. Your light also has a breakdown of 11, and you've finally got 2 8-0s to help rally your broken troops. They'll obviously offer no firing capability except to prevent any kind of cowering, and you really cannot afford to cower in this kind of terrain. The French have one tank, which is an H39 early war model, which only has a one-man turret. Again, because of the dashed lines, you can clearly make that out. However, it's got pretty strong armor. Upper superstructure is up armored, so you're going to have a 6s on the turret and front, sides, and back, and that's pretty decent. So considering the low or relatively low AP of the German guns, you may have a hard time penning the French tank. The H39 also has depletion number for AP of 10. It's primarily an infantry gun, and it only has an AP 10, which is still pretty high, but should you roll an 11 or 12, besides breaking your gun, you're also going to run out of AP. The other thing to remember about French armor is that it uses red to hit numbers. Unlike ordnance, which uses black, any vehicle ordnance will always use red to hit numbers, so remember that. And lastly, this 2 firepower coax can always be dismounted from that position and mounted as an AA machine gun, but it can only fire through the turret covered arc. This isn't going to happen in this scenario because there's no aerial firepower. And lastly, really concerning, again, is no rate of fire. One-man turret kind of makes sense. You don't have the capability to fire shots. However, because you are 37 millimeter, you do fall between 20 and 40, which means you'll be able to get multiple hits if you should roll doubles. Again, you just roll 2 to kill numbers, and you can pick which one you want to apply. When it comes to the gun itself, the French have a small caliber 25 double long. It's only at 4 firepower on the IFT, which doesn't matter because it's got no HE. So this is purely for shooting at tanks. Now the AP to kill number is only 7, and again, much like the H39, it has no special ammunition. So a plain AP shot, as I said, 7. You can tack on a couple points if you get really close or point blank, but considering their armor's 3s, maybe up armored a bit, then you're still going to have to roll fairly well to get a kill with a 25. So this could be used for a really good gotcha moment, provided it's set up in the right spot. Obviously, you have no idea how you're going to be approached by the Germans, so you're going to have to guess where you think they might come. But hopefully, if you're a French player, it works out for you, and you get a couple of point-blank shots in the rear. Start torching those German tanks. Another benefit for the gun because of that is its capability to set up HIP. So in concealment terrain, which you have the whole board to look at, you can use any of these locations to set up your AT gun. All right, so next up we're going to look at the COCA factors, which is a military intelligence term for helping define the battle space. O is the first one is observation fields of fire, then cover and concealment. And then you have obstacles, followed by key terrain, and then finally avenues of approach. Again, these tools just help mission planners. So first up, we're going to have observation fields of fire. Looking at the village terrain, obviously there's not going to be much in the way of long fire shots. There's only really 2 spots for fire lanes. That is something in the ground floor U4 you could set up this way, maybe S7, LMG this way, MMG up here. That would give you nice 2 fire lanes, assuming the Germans are going to come traipsing down the road, or at least help interdict them when they come north-south kind of movement. But that's about it. If you can get up into V3 on the first level, so you would be 3 levels higher than the base ground, the -1 valley, I should say, you'll get an unimpeded view pretty well of most of the northern map, but anything that is south of the 4-row hex line will obviously not be visible. Again, you have plateauing effects, so should the German presence be heavy up here and you have a unit up here on the first level, you should have a pretty good view of things. There's going to be a lot of point blank and 2-hex fire. I could see French setting us something up here. Germans will eventually be forced into this building. Any kind of front speed bump that the French put out is probably not going to slow them down very much at all. And by turn 2, they're probably going to occupy these locations, and then they can start firing again. 2 hexes. Obviously, stone is better than wood, but there's going to be a lot of point blank and 2-hex firing going on this map. When it comes to the German approach and cutoffs, 2 areas are important. If you can get units into this location and maybe in this location, then you can help contain the center, assuming the French set up in this location, or a majority of the forces, provided, of course, that you've cut through whatever wings that they've had. If you can get in these 2 kind of positions, you can cut them off and you force them to surrender. And you can help interdict them if they start trying to fall back into prepare positions. So if you have 2 flanking forces and you have your main thrust through the center, you can sandwich it between all 3 locations. Again, this is unlikely, but optimally, it's probably important to try and achieve that. As we said with the fire lanes, having a medium here and U4 might not be a bad idea. You do have a nice covered approach. You're in a stone building, which is really great. And should you start to break, you also have the potential to run down here and delay the Germans a little bit. Similarly, you can have a unit in this location for the same purpose if you want to have good coverage down the road. Again, there's so much dense terrain, you're probably not going to get much use out of them, but you never know, it might come in handy, especially if they're trying to force their way into the center where maybe your units are set up. Now, when it comes to the French gun, again, you can set up anywhere on the map, and you're going to have to guess where is a good shot to take at the Germans. Something like this, maybe you can get a good flank shot, or even this location here, you can maybe do the same thing. U4 is a good candidate. Again, it's stone, and you have a fairly wide arc. You can cover down both roads, especially if you're in U5 here, because again, you have good access to everything here. Remember, you cannot shoot at infantry with your gun. It has no HE. It only has AP. When it comes to cover and concealment, let's look at the attacker first. So you're going to enter concealed, which may not last very long. If the French has a couple half squads forward, maybe unconcealed, obviously it will strip you if you don't use assault movement. Anything moving down in the open will obviously be seen, but it might be sacrificial for the French to break up a squad into 2 half squads to just to bust concealment, because it's really, again, it's really not going to slow down. So we'll get into some tactics at the end, but it's, do you set up forward strong, or do you set up a screen up front with most of your force somewhere else? So both of them have their positives and their negatives, and ultimately the Germans going to have to adjust based on the French setup. You do have your smoke grenade exponent of 5. You've also got smoke discharges in all 3 vehicles. So there should be plenty of opportunity to get some white smoke, and then you're also going to have dispersed smoke flowing that direction, because again, we have the mild breeze from the southwest. Germans are going to have to use a lot of cover and concealment, avoiding those neg 1, neg 2 shots, trying to move in from building to building. Don't forget your dashes, use of smoke grenades, and your vehicle smoke dischargers. When it comes to the defender, again, you're going to start all concealed. However, you have no dummy stacks to help fool the enemy. It's what you see is what you get. Again, you have to decide if you're going to unconceal a unit or 2 just to break the German concealment. If they approach you and they're still concealed, when they unconceal, it's going to really hurt. So you want to try and reveal them as soon as possible. But that's going to take you losing concealment of your own unit, and now you're going to be easy fodder for the Germans. There's 6 stone buildings, multi-hex for 3 of them on the map, and they'll offer you better protection from the German fire than the wood ones. Obviously, try and avoid staying in the woods. However, you may not have a choice. Once more, you have to adjust based on the German attack plan, so you might have to move your forces around. Now, the center of the map is probably going to be a death trap. If you start having German armor showing up in these locations, cutting off your units, supported by infantry ideally. And you have, again, that strong force pushing in the center. They're going to get squished. You only have a few squads, 6, so it's not going to be a lot. For a defender, cover concealment, the most important thing to bear in mind is this area here is probably going to be a death trap. Should German units and armor start showing up on your flanks, and you still have units on the inside, they're not going to have anywhere to go. They're going to be forced to surrender and just going to be filling the CVP coffer for the Germans. So you're going to have to avoid putting too much of your units in this location. Your best bet is to probably try and retain concealment as much as possible, and then just falling back, skulking. Don't forget to use that whenever possible. Avoid those defensive fire shots. Yes, you'll have to endure a prep fire, but if they're shooting, it means that they're not moving. So it's a tactic that the French are probably going to have to apply, as well as keeping units on the outside of this death trap in here. You may want to have a couple in here just to give the Germans something to fight, but again, you don't have many troops, and you're going to have to divide your forces accordingly. But ultimately, you want to stay concealed for as long as possible, even if that means not going to hand, so that subsequently in your prep fire phase, you can maybe do some triple point blank. That'd be a good way to deal with the Germans. So just things to factor in. Concealment's going to be your friend, as well as the stone buildings. When it comes to obstacles, and this includes artificial as well as natural, there's no artificial roadblocks or rubble, that kind of thing to worry about. All you have to worry about is some natural terrain. Now, this area up north and in the south will prevent AFVs from easily gaining access to the upper levels. However, with some concerted effort, they could eventually make it there as well. But initially, they're not going to be able to send an AFV up to here right away and form up a good fire base. When it comes to key and or decisive terrain, this is features that are very important, and they make or break a battle. Now, for the defender, unfortunately, there's really not much in this case. It's a tactic of falling back, skulking whenever possible, trying to retain your concealment, because you're just not going to be able to withstand the German tanks and infantry firepower, not to mention the A3 with its flamethrower walking around. Hopefully the German breaks it on his first use, but obviously you can't depend upon that. You cannot hold the center for very long, because if you focus all your units in the center, you're just going to get picked apart by the Germans. So for the French defender, spreading out, making them come to you, as taking as long as possible, is probably the only way that you can drag this game out 6 turns. Now, when it comes to the attacker, once more, if we can get flanking units into these locations initially, you can help cut off anything that's in the front. If you can get flanking units into locations like this, then you can cut off anything in the rear, again, assuming the French forces are in the center. But that's probably the really important piece for the Germans, is controlling the center of the village itself. Once more, because there's no designated strong points for the French, there's really no real key terrain. But as I see it, again, if you can control the center as a German, then you're going to help eliminate any units on the outside when they try and rout or interdict them, etc. Now, when it comes to avenues of approach, again, I see 2, and this is entirely dependent on how the French set up. If they are strong in the center, then you send cutoffs on the sides, dealing with anything that's out here, while your main thrust comes to the center. Your pioneers with the flamethrower will make short work of anything in the center. And the second avenue of approach is if the French set up more dispersed. So should they be setting up on these houses back here, or put a couple of sacrificial units forward, maybe it's a half squad, you don't know, set up more dispersed, you're going to have to split your forces. Again, you could come from the center and then branch into each one, depending on it is, or you can come in from the 2 flanks, split your forces into 2, and then try and pincer the enemy into location. But again, you really must try and control to some degree the center, whether that's with your armor cutting off the roots or machine guns, LMGs, doing some fire lane kind of action. And so there we have Hamlet's Demise, scenario number A114. It's in the ASL Annual 97. Again, if you don't have electronic edition, you can get it 60, $70 on Wargame Vault from MMP's website. The link is there. If you don't have it, I'd highly recommend it. Again, there's more scenarios that most people are probably not going to get around to playing, but it's a good magazine nonetheless. That's it for this Initial Recce, and we'll look for you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.